Walker is like, basically Walker is like me if I was as courageous as I wish I could be. In the sense that like, Walker is a character who looks at every turn as just another problem to be solved, right? And that's the best thing about Walker is it's always forward, only forward with him. Like, so this is an issue, and we're going to solve this issue, and the issue about solving that issue is this issue. So it's like Walker's always going to be moving on to the next thing that he needs to do to accomplish his goal, which is first whatever he's been assigned to do. But when that goes to shit, which it almost always will in a Ben Walker novel, how to get himself and the other people around him out safely if he can do that. And so that's, Walker's sort of easy in that way because he's had a difficult history. He's in constant pain. He's been a workaholic. He's alienated his ex-wife, trying to love his kid. None of those things are me, but trying to love his kid and balance that out with his obligations or what he feels his obligations are, all of that. On the one hand, his sort of regular life, but once you get him into a situation, it's just got to get a resolution to this. So he's the person who's always going to step up when others are stepping back or stepping aside, right? So that's easy with Walker. And interestingly enough, like the Pandora Room, the idea for the Pandora Room wasn't a Ben Walker story. And in fact, neither was Ararat initially. Walker was a member of an ensemble in Ararat and turned out to be sort of like the primary hero, I guess you'd say, by the time the book was over. The Pandora Room started as an idea similar to the idea for Ararat, which was that while researching something else, I came across this mention about Pandora's box, which would have been a jar, as I point out in the book, like it would have been some kind of like a canopic jar style thing. And that there is another name for Pandora, that she has another name. And then, of course, the idea that, according to the myth, Pandora's box might have been full of all of the blessings or all of the curses or whatever was supposed to be in it, or both. And I don't know what happened. But this is what happens. I just thought, oh, there are two names. The second name is Anesidora. And I thought, well, what if the reason Pandora has another name is because there were actually two of them, and thus two jars, one with the blessings and one with the curses, and they find one of them and they don't know which one they found. Is it the one with the blessings and the one with the curses? And actually, I'd been sitting on that idea for many years. And a number of years ago, Tim Levin and I were asked to contribute to an anthology called Library of the Dead. And I suggested to Tim that we take this idea that I'd had, that I'd been playing with for a while, and write a short story around it. So the idea of the two jars actually appears in a short story that Tim and I wrote called Fault Lines, which is in Library of the Dead. And it's in my collection, Don't Go Alone. And so I then took that story, or I put that story aside. I said to Tim, hey, I know we sort of did this, but I think it would make a great Walker novel. And he's like, yeah, go for it. And so I went and wrote the Pandora Room. So look at all of these books as ensemble books where Walker is a member of the ensemble. And I think that's because I go back to, weirdly, I always talk about The Conjuring. Have you seen the Conjuring films? So the issue with the first Conjuring movie is really scary. And the second Conjuring movie, if you remove the nun, who's sort of a side character, not involved with the plot of the movie, really, other than the nun, there's nothing scary in The Conjuring 2. And the reason that you're not scared watching The Conjuring 2 is that in the first movie, you're introduced to the family that is in peril, that is being plagued by this supernatural and may die. And then you're introduced to the characters who come in as the investigators, And of course their names they're based on real people, and all of a sudden their names are right out of my head. But in any case, in the second movie, you meet them first and you're following them. They're the ones who pull you into the story. And once you do that, you know that nothing's going to happen to them because they're your like series stars, right? So it's like at that point, you might as well be watching CSI or Law and Order, and they're the cops or the lawyers who are the stars of the show, and you know that nothing's going to happen to them. And so one of the reasons that I always do these Walker stories as ensembles is because while you can be fairly confident that in some form or another, Walker will survive this story, I want you to be equally invested. That's why in Red Hands, Walker doesn't show up till chapter 4. You know, I want you to be invested first in Maeve and her family and their story and the peril that they're in, because they all could come to horrible endings. And so that's one of the reasons that I do that. And also because I want to tell those other stories too. I don't want to just put Walker through his paces. You know, so many characters in long running series like that. It's like we introduce our character, he's a badass, and we might see him go through certain experiences, but you know that at the end of the story, it's going to be like it, and it's no different in some ways than writing tie-in fiction. And this is I love those books and those series, and I really enjoy them. But in the sense of Zero Jeopardy, you know, once upon a time, I wrote a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer novels, and that was fun, and I really enjoyed it because that was one of my favorite shows of all time. But the trick there is that you're taking somebody else's toys out of the toy box, and you've got to put them back in the box the same way they came out. And I feel like, you know, I do feel like I'm evolving Walker book to book. But at the same time, unless I knew it was the last book, it's not like the reader thinks I'm going to kill him. You know, so the novel that I have is called Road of Bones, and that's a very, very small cast. It's a short book. It's a very, it's sort of the polar opposite in many ways of something like Snowblind, the novel that I'm about to start, which is a Halloween novel, which is the first time I've done that, which I'm really excited about. It's very much a sort of small town ensemble, like all of that, which I'm really looking forward to doing again because it's really fun. The reason why it's fun is because you get to touch on the relationships, the you know, what it's like in a small town where everybody knows each other's business, where even now, even in 2021, although the new novel is set in the 80s, but in 2021, you know, people still, if you've lived in a place a while, people still know each other's business, even people you've never even spoken to. I really enjoy working an ensemble. Although again, Road of Bones is a very tiny cast, but I enjoy working with an ensemble because of the ways in which you can kind of throw their interests in conflict. So I think the best cover I've had, and I was really fortunate to have Stephen King as a very early reader, and he loved it, and that's like, that means the world, obviously, but it also means the world because I heard from both Joe Hill and Rich Chismar, who Rich has been a friend of Steve's for many years and collaborated with him on a number of books, independently saying, hey, you know, he said he really loved your new book. I hear it's great. And I didn't ask them. They both said that to me at different times. And I was like, oh, he actually did really like it. So even at almost 54 years old, that still is like a huge thing. You know, it still is like, what a great reward to have. You know, I'm working on a whole bunch of I'm working on audio drama projects and comic book projects and film and TV projects. So my writing of prose has slowed down considerably. And that makes that time more precious. So, I mean, that said, again, I just finished this novella with Tim. I'm doing this new novella with Jim. Tom Snogoski and I are doing a new comic book series together. So yeah, you know, but you never know because those conversations always lead to something. I think that right now, I'm working on so many different things at once, and that's really fun. So I enjoy doing things that are different. Um, but I also am looking forward to the intimacy of tucking back into a book that it's just mine. I'm writing by myself. Nobody can tell me what to do. Like it's all of that. So it's nice to balance those things out. And I think that, if you're saying what can people look forward to as far as what I'm going for, honestly, um, I I feel like there are more personal, intimate, human horror stories that I want to tell. Because to me, that's the best thing about writing horror is you're writing sort of human stories.